What's up, people? Welcome to the first episode of Talk to Him, hosted by yours truly, the one and only Goods. All right, now, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? Let's get straight to it. We're going to talk about the events that's been going on lately. With me, I have two of my lovely friends from ECYP family. We've been together for a while. Right now, we got Anthony Miles from Baltimore, urban photographer and a speaker. We also got yours truly, Agape Davis, a college student and advocate for basic human rights. We're gonna get into the conversation. So yesterday, we know the Capitol was breached by a large amount of people. The first attack on the Capitol since 1812. The Capitol is supposed to be one of the most secure buildings around the world, and for it to be breached yesterday was highly unacceptable. The numbers that they unfolded yesterday was 4 people dead, 52 arrested, 14 police officers wounded. This was all because of the president, Donald J. Trump, lost to Joe Biden by 7 million votes. So we'll get into this conversation. We'll let everybody go around the table and make discussions. So we'll go ahead and start with Agape. How do you feel about this, Agape?
I feel I'm not surprised. I'm just appalled. I'm not surprised that they stormed the Capitol and like nothing happened, because we know that white privilege is real. And they've been trying to tell us for the past, 50, 100 plus years that it's not. And we can tell that it is. Like there was there was barely any police resistance. Like the National didn't come. I mean, like that's just, that's how I feel. I feel like it's not fair. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not surprised, but it makes me mad. Simple as that.
It's very interesting that you pulled that up. Back in June of 2020, when the Black Lives Matter protest took place in Washington, the National Guard was called, and they responded within a matter of minutes, if not under 5 hours. They were there quickly. But yesterday, the National Guard was called upon multiple times by multiple different people, and yet they did not come out. And that's really concerning, because if you look at the videos from the Black Lives Matter movement, you'll see how they were treated compared to yesterday. Not only did they breach the Capitol, they were able to make it into many offices of the lawmakers. They took the podiums, they sat at the desks, and it's crazy, because if it was somebody of the opposite color, it wouldn't have went down that way. But Anthony Miles, what do you think about this?
I like to. Well, first off, I want to say that I agree with both of y'all were saying, but I feel like this has always been how they felt. I feel like they just not even that. I feel like America's always been divided. It's just we have a good way of hiding the division. With the division, it's always been the ethnic versus the Caucasian or the predominant group that's always been. But I feel like once Donald Trump got elected, in this whole of him pushing for this Make America Great Again, that kind of initiated for subliminal racism and for people who feel a certain type of way to basically get behind it. So yes, I be feeling like they are fighting for him to stay in office, but only because of the morals that he'll bring for racism, or to basically make sure that they stay on top or stay the dominant or pro-dominant in America.
And what you say right there is pretty much us versus them, is what they say. Now, this takes me to a quote that I listened to yesterday. Donald Trump reacting to the protesters. He made a statement that we lost. He said we lost and this election was taken to us. But he said we will not play into their hands, saying as if he's identifying himself as one of them. What do you think about that, Anthony?
I feel like, well, actually, he is one. Well, not even. All right. Knowing Donald Trump record in history, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but he's a television. He started off with television, and plus his family's already had money, or he's a billionaire. He's been in a position where he hasn't been in the real frame of the world. So yes, with them saying things about him trying, he's basically in a way of It's all about manipulation. He's feeding to the crowd of, yes, these are predominantly Caucasian, but many of these people are what we would consider impoverished. They feel like something's being taken from them. So they are really in a situation where they're hostile, they're distraught, they're trying to fight for something when in actuality, this man has never even fought for a thing in his life. So it's like he's getting them to basically don't understand that they are for pushing this rubric or this mentality that what this man ain't even do nothing for y'all.
Hey, well, how do you feel about that, Agape?
I definitely agree because it's like the reasons that they want to re-elect Donald Trump are completely invalid. Like they want to say that he did all this for the economy because he's a businessman, but that's not even the case. Like they want to say that he's a good businessman, but he got all of his money from his father. And when he had his own chance for his own business, it failed. And we can see that from the taxes that he wasn't trying to give up. So all of those reasons that they want to say that Donald Trump is a good president is very invalid, very invalid. And that shows that their mindset is definitely flawed, in nice terms, flawed.
Correct. And we're just gonna stay on this topic before we jump over to another one. I'm gonna ask you guys what do you think about Trump's delay and response. We'll go back to August 12th when Charlottesville riots took place and Trump took so long to respond. When the Biden bus was tried to run off road by the Trump protesters while it was riding in Texas, it took Trump a while to respond. Also, yesterday, it wasn't until Biden called out Trump that he decided to respond. What do you think about that? We'll let Anthony go, and then we'll go back to Agape.
I feel he's intentionally responding or intentionally setting, because it was also somebody had brought up a quote like that. It was during one of the Black Lives Matter protests where he did come out and say it was something along the lines where he tweeted like the things are gonna get looted and somebody's gonna get shot. It was basically building up to it's almost like a whole brigade of a build up to mass manipulation. Because think about it, yes, I believe that with anybody, we can all get together and protest against something, but if I know anything, I can be one to go down to the Capitol, but I know, for instance, it has to be rally. You feel me? It has to be somebody had to pull this together in order to get these mass numbers. Yes, of course, we all know that this was going to be inauguration day, but at the same time, there was an alternative motive. You feel me? So I feel like in a way that he's delayed his responses, he's always been doing that, especially like you mentioned, with every incident, it's almost like this has either been targeted or he's riling up and wanting people to think that they're patroness and fighting for something when in actuality all you're doing is fighting for something, that a system that's already been broken is just negates.
Yeah, I definitely agree because it's like they're fighting for democracy, but they're really fighting against it. Like my thing is if he would have won the election and we had said something about the votes, would they have the same response? You know what I'm saying? The only reason that they're writing against this is because that Trump lost. If Trump would have won this election, they would have accepted those votes. And that's why I feel like they're very hypocritical, you know what I mean? And his late response is really just egging them on. Like he wants them to do this. He knows what he's doing. When he was doing that speech, that rally, he knew what he was doing when he told them to go walk he knew what he was doing. So his late response lines up with his character and what he's been doing this entire time. So
very well. And when he won the previous election against Hillary Clinton, when you look at the stats, the numbers were down. The young ages between 21 and 25, there weren't a lot of voters out. But as you see this election, that number went up tremendously. Trump lost 30% of his voters within the first 2 years of him being in presidency. So for him to lose by 7 million votes, it isn't a surprise. The stuff that he said before the election doesn't hold up to what he's been acting. He's been letting his supporters down in some sort of way. But I want to know how you guys feel about Trump, not only as a president, but as a person. it's often multiple sides to the story. So many people of color often we usually say Trump doesn't do anything for us, or somebody often throws out that Trump is racist. So let's lay a little background down to what he's been doing. Although he's kind of not there, he often antagonizes people, but employment rate has been down the lowest it's ever been. He's been funding HBCUs, criminal justice reform. He's been making multiple business opportunities helping military personnel. And I just want to know what you guys think about that. You want to go first, Agape?
Yeah, okay. It's very hard for me to like see the good things that he's done because I feel like they don't equal out with the bad things that he's done. I understand that he has helped, some funding and stuff, but I mean, compared to what's going on right now, it doesn't help his character, or it doesn't help my depiction of him, especially because when his Twitter is infamous for he makes invalid arguments, and he's constantly tweeting, and he's constantly tweeting things that are wrong. And so all those things that, he could have done in terms of funding, I don't really support. And especially also a lot of funding is going into the military defense and stuff. But my thing is, y'all are putting in money to the military defense when we need stuff that's done here, like currently in America right now, especially all the funding that we have that's going towards the police department and all that type of stuff. It's especially when we're having those issues with police brutality, and they're trying to say that, systemic racism isn't here. He put out that executive order saying, it's not here in America, and anybody that's teaching that is wrong and all that type of stuff. So I really just don't. I know that he's done some good things in his presidency, but I feel like the bad things definitely outweigh that. So I don't really view him as a good person.
Anthony?
Okay, I don't really want to paint him as a bad guy, but I'll say with anybody in entertainment, which he has dealt with prior to his presidency, he's an opportunist. And an opportunist isn't necessarily a good or bad person. They're bad. I would consider it like a monarch. You're a person who, of course, he has the resources to do and to help. But once he got in, yes, like you said, many things that he done once he was the president, but that was only because now that you're the president, we're looking at you to act. You have to lead. The whole country looks at you to. We look at you to lead. So with that being said, it's of course you're going to have to stand up, come up to the plate, and represent and also present some of the allocations that you claim that you represent. But at the same time, you can't. That's just like if I was to donate to a charity every year, but at the same time that I donated to a charity for another race or to help a different group, I'm also saying that I also feel that there's a need that we build a wall to keep us safe from other entering invaders. Do you feel like it doesn't make any chronological, like mentally it doesn't make sense as to it just doesn't sit right with me. So I would have to say, in the best way, I don't really look at him as a bad or a good guy, just an opportunist, like many people in the world who look for ways to make their name, get their brand themselves, which he's already done. So it's basically in a way of saying best way that I could paint him is just a greedy white man. Like all American white man.
That's true.
Very well, and I understand where you guys are coming from with that. And with all of this is taking place, all of the crime rates are going up nationwide. States are bursting through the roof with crime rates going up because of racial crimes. And everything is going towards the Republican side. But what about the Democratic side? What do you guys think about Joe Biden? It's a fact that everything is going down. We're just gonna pull up one incident everybody's talking about. What's going on at the border? The children being caged up at the border. Let's talk about that because the election is going down. Everybody thinks Biden is the right candidate. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But if we're gonna fact check everything, It was under the Obama administration, in which Joe Biden was the vice president for that, in which the cages were originally built at the border. Joe Biden also has a record of racism in his past. He also helped build the crime bill to keep people in jail 100% of the time they're arrested. And that starts mass incarceration. So what do you guys think about that? We'll start with Anthony and then go back to Agape.
Okay, so I ain't gonna lie. I've been wanting to touch on this topic for a minute. So yes, I am. I do know about. All right, so we just want to start off with politics. Period. I feel like we need a new system to check for ourselves, but it's to speak on both of them as presidents or their what they stand on. Both of them are not all like Democrats versus Republicans. I honestly feel like there is no fine divide or line between them because like even with like in history, it was a I forgot what it was, but it was basically on like a before the Republicans were the Democrats and the Democrats were the Republicans. They basically just switched. But altogether to say none of them are ever going to look for our best interest as the people. That's my bottom line. My moral is yes, we elected Joe Biden. My reason for electing Joe Biden was because I knew that either way, he was going to get a man out of this system that already he's kind of either you want somebody who's going to uphold and push a system that's already faulty, or a person who's going to literally try to make a system of democracy into a system of a dictatorship. And I did not want a dictator, so we had to go with the second runner. You feel me? But with that also being said, I do feel like they all need to suffer, not even suffer, but do what they saw, because ain't nobody hand not in the mix. You feel me? And especially with politics, we all forget that they always say that politicians are basically like they're heartless, and these are people who we elect, people who we trust, people who we give our money and our power to make decisions for us. But these are the ones who are the biggest backstabbers, if we know.
Right, I definitely agree. But for me, it's also this election was more like picking a lesser of two evils. I don't really agree with everything that Joe Biden says, and I know that he's definitely done some things in the past, but he was a better option than Donald Trump. And then also another taboo subject is one that I don't think the Black community is like ready to handle. But Obama was not the most perfect president. He was the first Black president, and we can give him his props. But he was not. He was definitely not the most perfect, especially with all the things that he did in Syria, in the Middle East. And we had police brutality during his election and all that type of stuff too. So I mean, he wasn't the most perfect. So I just feel like it's really just a lesser of two evils, and we got to do what we got to do at this point. That's how I feel.
You guys are amazing. It's amazing. Conversations like this are really well in their need, and not too many people are educated on what's going on around. They often jump on a train and just rock with it. For example, everybody, when the election was going on, everybody was posting, I voted, but do you know who you really voted for? Were you following the train? Do you know who you really voted for, or did you think you just voted because everybody told you to vote for this man? People often jump on the presidential election and they often disregard the other elections, such as the senator elections, your councilman elections, your mayor, your governor. People don't pay attention to that, but they just pay attention to the president. And often the president cannot do everything without the power of everybody else, the Senate and the House of Representatives, because it's separation of power. We have to balance it out. People say that as a country, we have to destroy in order to rebuild. We have to destroy what we had in the past in order to rebuild and make something stronger. Now, we're often worried about wars going on around the country. We're often in the Middle East. We're often worried about oil somewhere else or presidents in another country, but we don't never focus on ourselves. And if this country is to fall, it will fall from within. people often put in input, they don't fact check each other, and miscommunication goes around. I like the fact that we talked about Barack Obama. People were often on him because he was the first black president, and often, and since he was there, people was like, yes, he's the first black president, he was great, he was this and that, and that's why people are often jumping on Kamala Harris, the first female African American vice president. Now let's go back on Kamala Harris. Although people think she's a great person, she has often done really bad stuff in her past. She has put more African Americans in jail than anyone. She claims to be for the African American community, but doesn't have any type of African American background. In fact, the person that she is married to is not African American. What do you guys think about that? Anybody?
I feel like it is great that we have the representation, but also I wouldn't see her as the best representation as somebody to first go on there. Like I would have definitely rather have had somebody like the person in Georgia, Stacey Abrams. Yes, her. She would be a great candidate, as I see, as somebody who can help the Black community. But Kamala Harris, she has a shady past and all that type of stuff. But I mean, what can you do at this point? That's all. It's like what? I don't know.
And I think she also helped pass. It was some because she passed some law or bill that also allowed for them to like keep and detain like African Americans that were basically charged with like petty drug incarceration, so like weed, all of that stuff. But mind you, they're all trying to pass and speak on why weed should be legalized. That was my biggest like the thing that was just like flabbergasted me, because I was like, okay, so like what is really going on? That's why I really had to take my own side in a sense with to look at to do my research on her and Joe Biden, because at first I ain't gonna lie, it was in a situation where it was like, oh, just because we have a president for 4 years or that was serving a term that we didn't like, it was almost like, okay, everybody rushed to the opposite side. But you have to also dissect the opposite side, because at this point, if we just picking worse or worser, nothing's never going to get better. We're being reactive instead of proactive. But it's to speak on her, I feel like yet again, these are people who are well immersed in their opportunity of being opportunists. So of course they're going to take the face and be the look of what they need to get passed through by, but they are not going to abide or to initiate none of
it. That is very sad. And I believe we do need to become more aware, and hopefully these podcasts will get us there. Do you believe as an African American voting for would you say voting for Trump is a bad thing? Would you say anyone who voted for Trump is not really an African American? Let's go back to when Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black. Let's go to when Maxine Waters said she will never, ever forgive a Black man or woman who votes for Trump. What do you guys think about that?
I do somewhat agree. But I also believe that depending on where they're like what area they were raised in, they could definitely have like a false, they had false morals or ideals of what they were raised up in. So, but I also don't, it's just, I understand, but I also was like, is he so overtly wrong? Like, how could you enforce that or support that? But I don't know. That's kind of tough sometimes. But I also, when I see somebody that voted for Trump, I'm just like, I get a little offensive sometimes, a little cautious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anthony, anything?
I would have to say, yes, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I do not necessarily feel like we would have to treat them less if a person was to vote, or a person of color was to vote for Trump. The only thing that I, like Agape said, they have a false reality, false morals, and they obviously need to be. They need to be well. It has to be a new understanding of knowledge that needs to be spread about the situation first, and then after that, then we can have we can dissect the situation and have a heart to heart about what their actual side is. Because sometimes I feel like many people just follow the biggest star or the biggest flame that they see. And for instance, we know Donald Trump has money. We know that around the time with the stimulus checks and all of the times when they, even if he was the reason why people were getting paid, mostly through government assistance or not, but people definitely started to rally around him because they knew that this was a man who had a foundation, who was only adding onto the foundation to become president. So, not necessarily saying that I don't agree, because all that really is, that just sound like gold diggers to me. But at the same time, don't get me wrong, everybody got their hustle. But my only thing is, if you don't know, people say that they'll vote for him, but they don't really know what he's even about until they elect him. So as far as African Americans who do vote for him, yes, I am gonna give y'all the look, the side eye, the evil eye, all that stuff. But at the same time, deep down, I just feel like they don't really know as much, not even as much, because they probably be in it, the nitty gritty as much as we are. But at the same time, I feel like for you to side with someone who really does not or have not ever seen your side of reality, like this man has never woken up in a house that yo was about to get kicked out because the rent wasn't there. Yo, he's never been in a situation where in a house that probably wasn't no less than bigger than a mansion. He's never been in a situation where he's seen the struggle of you having to get up and try to catch the bus to get to school. This man has never been or walked that walk. So yes, you are free to do and vote and say, but I'm going with somebody who's went through the same struggle, the same hustle, the same, and even though many of the presidents that we have, even elected who were Democrats, have not went through the same thing, they know within the community what goes on in the community. This man does not know what the fuck goes on. My fault. This man does not know what goes on outside of the white privilege he's in, which is the power and which is mostly this society that we live
in. Very well. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Many people around here, you two are the perfect representation of young, Black, and educated, and I appreciate that. We often dwell on the past and we never focus on the future. And when I get to come and I have conversations about this with friends, many people don't know we come from Baltimore. We're ECYP, Elijah Cummings Youth Program. He picked us up. He turned us around. There's 13 of us. We went to Israel. That's probably an experience we would have never been able to do if we was never in ECYP. And to sit down and have a political conversation with educated African American young people, if we keep doing this, we're able to broadcast and strengthen ourselves in the community and bring awareness to stuff that needs to bring awareness to. And to have you guys here, it was great. And I really appreciate you guys. This brings me to my philosophy. Many people might be like, why tie your philosophy to politics? Well, this is the first podcast, the podcast that's going to be building the rest of my podcast. And my philosophy is going to be, what is culture without trust? What is culture without bondage? What is culture without brotherhood or sisterhood? As a culture, we're falling apart. We no longer communicate. We're scared to feel for each other. Females are scared to talk to the brothers because they have traumatizing past. Brothers no longer act with love, but in aggression. The males no longer talk issues out. The first thing they want to do is pick up guns and may the best shot win. Young ones are scared to go outside because they're afraid of being gunned down in the streets of Baltimore or any other streets. The OGs no longer say anything to anybody because they already did their time and nobody listens anymore. As a culture, we must rebuild. We must first start with our brothers and our sisters, and we must rebuild the brotherhood and the sisterhoods that we once were. We must rebuild our neighborhoods one by one. We can no longer call ourselves culture or family if we don't build our character, or we can't build if our character has been compromised. We must stand as our kings and queens, and we must allow the youth to follow us. We must protect them, lean on each other's shoulders when we're down. We must speak on our past, but not seek sympathy for it. Focus on building our future. For if we keep looking towards the past, we'll never be able to see the future. This doesn't mean that we forget the past, but if we keep speaking on the past, it's bound to repeat itself. You understand that? So not only the ones that we look up to, but the ones that look up to us. We cannot seek materialistic objects as rewards. Sometimes every reward isn't a physical reward, but we should not only work on building our physical character, but our moral character as well. We must work to build a strength and healthy mind. For once a strong mind is established, all the other compounds will come together, and this goal is to be strong in the mind, the body, and the soul. I appreciate you guys for coming and speaking to me, and I hope we're able to get together and have a conversation again. Thank you, Anthony Miles and Agape Davis. This is the first episode of Talk to Him, hosted by yours truly, the one and only Goods. If not us, then who? If not now, then when?